Do you mind giving us a just like small brief summary? What does it mean to you? Like, I mean, this whole thing, because it happened like 50 years ago. And then after 50 years, more or less, it's overturned. So the constitutional right, it was given the right to privacy. And part of that is actually the right to have this abortion right and everything. It's basically more or less said that, oh, we don't do it anymore. Is that like more the state level, what they will decide. So that's my understanding. But if you just like, give us more your understanding.
Yeah. So, I mean, when Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973, that was the accumulation of 20 years of serious frontline activism from women who were facing the consequences and the effects of having to go through illegal and unsafe abortions. And it was, abortions have been happening and women have been trying to take control of their fertility since the dawn of mankind. This is not something new. And it wasn't until it started becoming a bit more mainstream. And before Roe v. Wade was passed, there was this thing called therapeutic abortions that doctors could grant women if they felt that the woman's life was at danger. And, if there were certain doctors who felt maybe more liberally inclined, if the woman said, I'm going to kill myself if I don't get this abortion, they would then consider that a risk to the woman's life, and then they would perform the abortion. This, of course, came with a cost. It was never free, and it also depended on where you were living. Not every doctor would perform this, and to get it passed, you would have to go to a board of directors of doctors, all male doctors, and you'd have to sit in front of them like a panel and explain why you deserved an abortion. So that process was extremely, traumatic for so many women, and I think it kind of got to the point where more and more women were speaking about this, and it became a really frontline issue for feminist activism, particularly first wave feminism in America. In terms of like the politics of it, it did not used to always be this polarizing, and it wasn't always this partisan an issue. Before, it wasn't a requirement for a Republican politician to take a pro-life stance. It was actually the Republican Party who originally took a pro-choice stance, because their whole motto for their party is less governmental control. So, in essence, when you think about it, that party is going to take a stance of the government should not have any say and any input in what a woman and a husband choose to decide about their fertility, because that's what the conversation always was, 50 years ago. And I think it still is sometimes now. But so yeah, it didn't used to be this polarizing, and it was not, divided across party lines. It did, Ronald Reagan, actually, who was kind of the pivotal, his election was kind of like a really pivotal point in this abortion debate, because he originally, throughout his political career, took a pro-choice stance. And it wasn't until that he was looking to get elected, him and his people really realized that there was a serious source of untapped potential within evangelical Christians in America, because they were not voting. And it was because they, didn't feel that the Republican Party was conservative enough, and the Democrat Party definitely wasn't conservative enough for what they wanted to portray their values. So they realized that they could get and galvanize millions of voters just on the issue of abortion. And once Ronald Reagan realized that, the Republican Party became this pro-life movement. And ever since then, it's been crazy. And I mean, so I was born in Texas. That's where my mom and all of that side of the family are from. And it is extremely politicized in southern states, particularly Texas. And, in Texas, you can be elected as, agricultural officer and chief financial officer within the state, not based on necessarily your skills within that sector, but on your stance and how strongly your stance is for being pro-life. And I think that is so telling how important this control has become on women's fertilization and their reproductive rights and their bodies. So it's really taken since since Roe v. Wade was enacted, the pro-life movement have been working, this isn't like a new thing. They have been working tirelessly. And I don't think many people realize in America, prior to Roe v. Wade being completely overturned, how many restrictions on abortion were actually passed. I think from 2010 to 2018, it was something like 300 restriction-based laws were passed that were making abortion harder and harder to get. Last September, even in Texas, they passed the heartbeat legislation, which pretty much made that any abortion prior to there being a medically visible cardiac activity, being a heartbeat, a woman could not access an abortion under no circumstances. And that period is 6 weeks. So a woman would have to know that she's pregnant, get an appointment in time, and have the abortion prior to 6 weeks. And that is, they were just putting the middle finger up to all these women in Texas because they knew that that was never going to happen. So it has been something that has been brewing, I think, under the politics of it. And yeah, it's extremely frustrating, the fact that this is a topic of discussion and debate, the fact that our rights are being debated and made to be these fundraising and campaign issues.
I mean, when going back to this Supreme Court, this ruling, I mean, in terms of the technicalities, it doesn't mean that they are banning abortion.
No.
It's passing things to the state level.
Mm-hmm.
The state can decide in their own way whether to ban or to facilitate or whatever they want to do.
Yeah. So as I'm currently aware of today, as of yesterday, there was 24 states that had enacted complete all right bans. And there's even states that have criminalized it. So it's not even just banned, it's criminalized to the point where a woman can be penalized, criminalized, and sent to jail for getting an abortion. She can also be sued by whoever fathered this baby, this child, and the family members of that man can also sue. So there was really interesting, it was when this was being passed, they were asking all of these questions worst case scenario, say if this man has 10 brothers and sisters and their spouses, and they all file a lawsuit against a woman who gets an abortion for $20 million each, can they do that? Yes. Under the laws that are being passed right now, that is completely within that man's rights. It's insane, especially coming from the Supreme Court, that earlier in the week, they said that states didn't have the right to make decisions regarding gun ownership and gun control. But then by the end of the week, they were saying, states should have a right to control women's bodies. So it's just a flagrant hypocrisy in, that whole party. But, that's another topic.
Because since you are from Texas, I think Texas is now triggering a law which can put people in jail for 99 years.
Well, yeah. I'm not even surprised.
What the hell is this?
So Texas did yesterday, they blocked one of the outright bans. So technically you can still receive an abortion up to 6 weeks. I can understand how any day where any type of abortion, when some type of abortion is still allowed, is still a good day, in theory. But when you look at the reality of it, it's not something that I'm particularly celebrating. And I don't think many people are, because this isn't a win, and we shouldn't have to compromise on our rights. That's what's so frustrating, I think, for me and so many women. And I really want to preface as well that I really want to acknowledge my privilege within this situation, because I'm not currently living in America, and I haven't for a really long time. So there's an experience of detachment that I feel within this, because yes, I am a woman. But I'm a privileged white woman who's not living under these oppressive, restrictive laws. So, you know, I need to acknowledge that. And I'm not saying that like women who are in my shoes, you know, don't have a right to have feelings and to have opinions about this. I think this is an issue that is not just affecting women, and we're going to see that very, very shortly. I mean, when what's his name, Clarence Thomas, who was one of the Supreme Court justices, immediately when Roe v. Wade was overturned, he came out with saying that he thought that we should overturn, or we should start reconsidering Griswold versus Connecticut, Lawrence versus Texas, and Obergefell and versus Hodges. And all of those are to do with the right to privacy, same-sex, private sexual acts, same-sex marriage, and contraception. So the fact that we've got somebody who's sitting as a Supreme Court justice currently, who is genuinely wanting to overturn not just abortion, but also all of these other things, is really telling that this is not just an issue for women. You know, right now it is, and it's not just for women. It's, you know, for everybody who has a uterus. You know, we're all affected by this, but it is unfortunately going to be affecting marginalized women within, or people within America currently, and that is poorer people and people of color and people who are living already in horrific socioeconomic conditions. And, you know, these restrictions are just going to keep them down, and I think that's exactly what they want.